Disruptive Innovation FM. Disruptive Innovation FM.
And it is another week of the show banned in every capitalist nation around the globe, Disruptive Innovation FM. I'm your host, Jeffrey Colon, at DJGEOFFE on Twitter, coming to you with another wonderful episode from the metropolitan New York area. Hope you're well. A lot of stuff happening out there in the news that we're excited to talk about this week. Bitcoin, the new monetary system that has risen as a result of the end of the euro. The mobile phone as your new office. How SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses, are finally using mobile and data to chop away at the big owners, the big enterprises, I should say, in business. And, of course, we will talk about the publishing and cable industries as the battle with Aereo TV continues. And it just it looks good for Aereo. Doesn't look good for the broadcasters. In fact, you have two broadcasters that just actually threatened to move to cable. Fox, I believe, was one of them. I think CBS was the other. Let me tell you, if your plan is basically to move your network to a cable signal because you do not know how to innovate, you should basically just throw away your business model and stop operating now. So yeah, I'd love your feedback again at DJGEOFFE on Twitter. And of course, we'll start this week with talking about Bitcoin. Great article in Forbes this past week on Bitcoin being a disruptive technology. Couldn't agree more. Definite thumbs up to Timothy Lee, who writes about how technology shapes society. Wrote a great piece and actually disclosed that he owns Bitcoins. I actually did a presentation in 2011 to the CMO of Ally Bank at the time. I was in between agencies, and a friend of mine said, hey, we're trying to actually do some more digital strategy with Ally Bank. And I went and spoke to the CMO, gave him a whole presentation on the future of digital banking, or I should say marketing within banking. And that presentation's actually up on my SlideShare. If you want to take a look at that, slideshare.net/Jeffrey Colon. Really interesting stuff, though, because in that was a whole section or number of slides about Bitcoin. And a lot of people have been asking this week specifically, what is Bitcoin and what, who's using it? Well, one thing is certain. I mean, if you think about why Bitcoin is starting to take off, one is you have the whole issue of what's happening in Cyprus. Basically, the euro is irrelevant in that country and probably will end up being irrelevant in several other countries in Europe, most likely Spain, Italy. Spain and Italy, I should say, possibly Portugal. But while it becomes irrelevant, people need to still pay for things. So if the monetary system isn't a way to pay for it, what can you use? And I think that's why Bitcoin, even though it is not new, it's not a new technology whatsoever. It's been around for many, many years, and many people within the digital community have used it to sort of barter with each other. it is a disruptive technology because it basically is replacing sort of the financial notes that we know about as a result. There is a lot of people who are utilizing Bitcoins now. There are a lot of merchants that are, I think, starting to take them. And it may be very interesting that the feds, especially in the United States, I think are looking into this and saying, what is this? And, you only have Bitcoins accepted at a few merchants right now in the world. Although if you think about it, Visa and MasterCard are accepted everywhere, and that is not really, it's tied to the monetary system, but it's not really money. You're handing a piece of plastic to someone, and it's an electronic transaction. So Bitcoins might actually take off depending on what kind of battle they get from the financial system as we know it. But I think the fact that there's a minority of tech-savvy enthusiasts using it, this really is a disruptor to the financial industry, and it'll be fun to watch if it takes off, if it doesn't take off. Of course, this past week it was hacked. I think a lot of things there is you have a lot of people within the digital community who are really into Bitcoin, and hackers in general like to use the sort of the monetary system. And I do think someone hacked it who probably doesn't think that it's, that feels it's a threat to the global, monetary system. So of course they hacked it, but I don't, I think it'll be interesting to see where it goes. I myself don't own any Bitcoins. I might get into it just to see how it operates a little bit more. But if you apply disruptive innovation to Bitcoins, again, let's, think about disruptive innovation in its classic sense, going back to Clay Christensen and how he defined it. But, disruptive technology is one that's simpler and cheaper than what's already on the market. So if you think about it, it's cheaper actually to use Bitcoin in some countries than it is to use your inflated monetary system, because those notes mean nothing. Disruptive technologies are inferior to what's already on the market. We know that. And they tend to be dismissed as impractical toys by industry incumbents. I can't tell you how many people have written off Bitcoin as any valid system. I'm not saying it's a valid system at all. We don't know where it will go, but you can't have people, this always happens within disruptive technologies. You always have a few naysayers who usually come from the traditional ranks saying what a joke this is. And it's usually those naysayers that eat crow because they don't really have their pulse on the behavior and the psychology or understand the technology for that matter and how it's adapted by the masses. Again, I've been a big proponent for a while of thinking that the operating systems of certain phones, as we know them now, will definitely change over time because we have to take into consideration the globe. And, you have a lot of people, I myself, disclaimer, an Apple fanboy. I don't think Apple will be the main, or I should say the dominant operating system in the next 2 years. One, the price point is too high. Two, you have too much competition with the Android operating system, which is built on open source and is available pretty much, I should say, controls 60% of the marketplace. And then also in terms of phone price point, I think Apple will have a hard time competing in India, China, and Brazil. I actually think Windows 8 could do very well in those countries. I know Microsoft has always been written off by the naysayers as not knowing what they're doing, but I think they actually could own those markets, especially if Nokia undercuts the competition and prices that phone accordingly. I've gotten to test the Lumina And it's actually a pretty cool phone. I think the operating system is actually very cool as well. Anyhow, I digress. Back to what we were chatting in terms of Bitcoin, but you have to look at the fact again that these industry incumbents are talking about, they're just sort of saying whatever. This is irrelevant. We'll always have a financial system. We'll always have a monetary system. We used to carry gold around and pay each other that way. We don't do that anymore, and we're not even on the gold standard. So in some respects, I do think that things as they've existed for a while in terms of payment are really changing radically just because of the digital landscape and atmosphere that's out there. So I think, we have to just look at the fact that the Bitcoin economy today really looks a lot like the PC market circa 1978. They sort of, most people are looking at Bitcoin and they see an impractical curiosity. They're happy with the banking services they're already using. They can't imagine why anyone would want to use an alternative currency that's not really widely accepted and doesn't offer any consumer protection. I mean, the FDIC is not going to be able to bail you out if Bitcoin goes bust. But there's a lot of people out there that are playing with it now. There's Bitcoin-based banks, there's casinos, derivatives markets, retailers. There's people accepting it now. There's more barter of it. I think some of the new applications we see, they're weird. They're unique, so to speak. But, it may not go anywhere, but at the same time, in 1978, people didn't think the PC would go anywhere, and it really became adopted en masse by the mid-'80s. So, going back to Tim Lee's point in his Forbes article, when people dismiss Bitcoins because they can't think of how they'd use them, they're missing the fact that Bitcoin is a platform. It's not a product. It's a way for people to trade a monetary system. So when ordinary users started buying computers, it wasn't because they thought it would be cool to own a computer. You have to think about the real reason why people would buy a computer in 1978. They did it mainly because they wanted to do spreadsheets or word processing or email. So similarly, ordinary users aren't going to start using Bitcoins just because it's a cool technology. If normal users start using Bitcoin, it will be because they're interested in gambling, in cheap international money transfers, or some other applications that haven't been invented yet. And Bitcoin's intermediary free architecture means that many more people can try their hand at building the platform's killer app. So that's very interesting in terms of looking at Bitcoin and where it may go. I do think we will see more alternative currencies. I do think we will eventually see digital cash. I do think we will see a lot of things that will take the place of how we've known money for a very long period of time. And I think the interesting thing is we now live in a world where it is so disruptive that you can make better mobile payments at Starbucks than you can with a Bank of America application. I mean, the banks are totally caught off guard here. I think they think they're rolling into a sort of a system that has existed for many, many years. And like most disruptive innovation technologies, they're going to be caught off guard as more of these alternatives such as Bitcoin rise to the occasion. So that's my take on Bitcoin for this week. It's going to be very fun to actually watch where this story goes over the next couple of weeks. I think it's quite interesting. So another thing I wanted to draw attention to this week is the fact that Aereo TV has been doing a wonderful job in sort of destroying the broadcast model as we have known it for some time. And I think the interesting thing there is the judge that ruled on the case basically has cleared the way for, free TV everywhere. And it has caused such disturbance with some of these big broadcasters that you have a lot of them sort of circling the wagons and saying, we're not going to allow this to happen. I think what was interesting about I believe it was a press release from Aereo, is that they cited the fact that the FCC gives these broadcasters the license to broadcast in the first place over free airwaves. So they're almost citing an FCC byline which says you guys really are going against that rule by charging for broadcast rights to a lot of these. I guess if you think about it, they're charging rates to these cable networks for them to be broadcast, but over air, so OTA, they should be free. And Aereo is just sort of building on that existing technology and that existing sort of bylaw that the FCC enforces. And that's going to be really hard to undercut. So it'll be interesting to see where Aereo goes. It's really filled an urgency for a lot of stations to move into mobile. I think this is the interesting area that we have to continue to watch is, and I go back to the constant sort of example that I talked about on the first episode ever of this show, and that is the fact that when Napster came about during the music industry moved very slow to adopting MP3 technology. In fact, they tried to just sue it away, very similar to what the broadcasters are doing here. And what they really should be doing is they should be moving very quickly to disrupt their own model and move into mobile faster than Aereo can take advantage of that. And listen, we know where this story always ends up. The disruptor always ends up on the better side of the companies that are sort of playing the incumbent role. And I don't see a very good future, unfortunately, for broadcast television here. It's going to be very interesting to sort of see how this plays out over the next couple of months. And there's already, I guess, another company that is launching that's going to try to take on Aereo. So this is going to get actually more interesting as time goes on, and those are always the types of battles that we enjoy quite a bit. So the final area I wanted to talk about in this particular week's show, and I hope you guys are all enjoying it, again, at DJGEOFFE on Twitter, Disruptive Innovation, I should say hashtag Disruptive Innovation. The thing that I want to definitely talk about is mobile for the last 10 minutes here of the show. Mobile is a very interesting area now because we're moving at a rapid rate where people are really leaving the PC behind as we know it. In fact, PCs will continue to decline. People will still buy them and use software on them to do heavy lifting. I don't think that will go away, but I mean, very much like the desktop computers from a couple of years ago. I mean, you don't really see Apple even producing many of those anymore. They only produce a small fraction, which, designers use. Most designers now, I think, plug into a larger screen, and they still use a very powerful laptop. So they're not even getting, bigger desktops. And I think eventually those laptops will really fold into the tablet. I think the tablet will ultimately become the big heavy lifter. I mean, obviously we see that with the Surface tablets. You can plug in the keyboard. I think that eventually with the new iPads, you will see something similar. And I think that will just make way for the tablet revolution. And sort of leave PCs in the dust. But in terms of mobile now, how is mobile really, how is it being a disruptive innovation in terms of looking at how companies and enterprises are using that technology to wield a competitive advantage against larger organizations? So, for example, if you look at many small to medium-sized businesses, the advantage of mobile for them is how do they use the data that comes up as a result of mobile to their advantage over a larger enterprise. And this is where I think the big battle will take place. Big data is now a result of these tiny screens. And you're going to see more and more of these tiny screens really as the battleground for some of these smaller businesses who are going to be able to use this to their advantage. The mobile phone is pretty much the equivalent of a 1,000 person office. What you can do on your mobile phone as an individual is highly powerful and highly capable. So depending on what you do with your organization, what apps you have, if your website is mobile optimized, if you're using social networks, you can really disrupt a large organization that might not be optimized for the mobile phone era. And I've said this for quite a bit of time. I think Google and I think Facebook are really sort of the last great desktop era companies. They were invented when people really sort of sat in front of their computer at their desk on a PC. And I think Facebook has done a pretty good job getting into the mobile arena. Google as well. I mean, of course, they're both building off of the Android operating system. They're both using open source. We have seen how Facebook has almost disrupted Google in some respects by building Facebook Home, which really takes over your operating system on Android. There's nothing Google can do about that. Google doesn't own Android. They build on top of Android just like many other organizations do. So Facebook sort of saw that to their advantage. 60% of the market uses an Android operating system on their mobile phone, and they figured, hey, we're going to build an operating system that'll wrap around, the mobile phone experience within Android. I mean, I don't think we've seen the end of what Google plans on doing. I think they'll probably continue to try to build something. I also think they will eventually partner with a hardware company such as maybe like an Ericsson, possibly Motorola, to build their own phone. So we haven't seen the end of them yet. But the fact that a small organization can move quicker in developing a lot of these applications, take advantage of an open source platform like Android, take advantage of the fact that they can build an app for the iOS system, take advantage of the fact that they can build on Windows 8 or build on BlackBerry. If you can move quicker to market, collect data, reach your customer base, do it all with a small team, SMBs can use mobile to basically disrupt large enterprises. So I've always seen the mobile phone as the disruptive innovation for small to medium-sized businesses over their larger adversaries. And I think large companies who sort of have taken mobile and said, yeah, that's an area where we can engage with our customers, and we're still trying to figure out our strategy, and we don't really know what we're doing there, and we're going to take it slow, are probably going to be eaten alive, because it's only getting to be faster, quicker, stronger, in terms of how companies are taking advantage of mobile, especially smaller companies. I think the data that they can get and utilize to their advantage, whether it's local data on who their users are, data on where their users go, how they engage with a company, what they're looking for, etc. That can really be utilized in a way that gives them major advantages over larger organizations. And I think we're just at the beginning of that now. I think we will see smaller companies come about, specifically mobile-oriented companies, that will eat away at bigger organizations that have been around for some time because they have not been able to adopt their mobile strategy very well. So it should be very interesting to see where this goes. But I do think we have to keep our eyes on the fact that small to medium-sized businesses really sort of control mobile now. They have a huge advantage in this area over larger organizations. Now, again, larger organizations can spend more money on apps, builds, analyzing data, etc. But the fact that small and medium-sized businesses can utilize their entire workforce, I think, in a quicker rate using the BYOD phenomenon, bring your own device, is another also big area. The fact that you can show up to work at a medium-sized business with your iPhone, and the IT department will say, hey, we're going to hook this up for you so you can do your work on it. It makes that workforce enabled much better than a large enterprise company that is still handing out BlackBerries and trying to sort of go the route of the company will give you your equipment. That slows things down. It also doesn't make things relevant in terms of how we interact. If you mainly interact with the world on an iPhone and then you're handed a BlackBerry at work, you're going to have a hard time sort of figuring out how you fit into the real world from the when you're basically in your work environment. That's why I think BYOD is such an empowering tool for SMBs and will continue to be a powerful tool for SMBs. So we have to keep a lookout for where that's headed. But I do think that mobile really is the great enabler. So I am speaking live May 14th at the Westchester Digital Summit. I am giving a discussion on disruptive innovation for SMBs, how small to medium-sized businesses can take advantage of mobile technology to be more competitive to larger enterprise. I am also going to be speaking on a panel during Internet Week in New York, from IRL to URL, how to use digital to advance your career. I do want to thank the hosts at New York Creative Interns. I got to speak at their event this past week, and it was wonderful. Definitely would love you to check them out at NY Creative Interns on Twitter, and would love your feedback at DJGEOFFE. Disruptive Innovation FM.
Disruptive Innovation FM.